We waited a whole extra year for it, but the Tokyo Games finally happened. Records were broken, new moments of glory were reached, and now the Olympic flame is on its way to Paris for yet another edition in 2024. How did the Latin American athletes do this time compared to previous Olympiads? Join me for a brief look at the history of Latin America and the Caribbean in the Summer Olympics. There had been much interest in reviving the ancient Olympic Games throughout the 19th century, but it was not until 1896 that the first Games were held, in Athens. Because this was essentially a European elite affair and the difficulties of travel, the only country from the Western Hemisphere to participate officially was the United States, who sent 14 athletes to the event. There was, however, a seemingly unofficial participant from Latin America, Luis Subercaseaux, a Chilean who was registered as an athlete with the French delegation and who claimed to have run in several of the Olympic races. There is no record that he ever did so, however, so there's some debate as to whether he truly was the first Latin American to participate, although, of course, no doubt exists for the Chilean Olympic Committee, who absolutely recognizes him as the first. Whatever truly happened, it is the case that official participation from Latin America did not happen until 1900, when Argentina, Colombia, Cuba, Haiti, Mexico, and Peru had a combined 11 athletes participate. Because there were no national Olympic committees who chose the athletes or rules about who could or could not be part of a team, though, Colombia's single athlete participated as part of the French team in the tug-of-war competition. Yes, tug-of-war. That was an Olympic sport until 1920, when it was discontinued. It was also during these games that Latin America won its first gold medal. The honor went to Cuba. Can you guess in what sport? If you guessed fencing, you're absolutely correct. The individual in question was Ramon Fonst, a Havana-born fencer who was studying fencing in France at the time. He would go on to win another 2 gold medals in 1904. In the following Olympiads, however, Latin American participation would be uneven. Cuban athletes were the only ones from Latin America in St. Louis in 1904, for instance. In London, 1908, there was only a single Argentine, Horatio Torrome, a man who grew up in the United Kingdom. In fact, it would not be until 1948, also in London, that the majority from Latin America would have representatives at the Games. These were Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Cuba, Mexico, Panama, Peru, Puerto Rico, Uruguay, and Venezuela. The Caribbean also saw athletes from Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. It would still take another 20 years, the Olympiad of 1968 in Mexico City, for at least 90% of Latin America and the Caribbean to send athletes, which has become a regular occurrence since then. In the 2020 Olympics, there were 1,186 athletes that competed from Latin America and 117 from the Caribbean, with every Olympic sport having a representative from at least one country in the region. During that time, the Games have taken place in Latin America twice, the first in Mexico City in 1968 and the second in Rio in 2016. Interestingly, both times there was serious political upheaval prior to the Games, and the government worried about potential disruptions, but in the end the Olympics took place successfully. In the case of Mexico 68, if you're British, Australian, or American, and you remember or have seen pictures of the Games, it is probably the iconic Black Power salute that Tommy Smith and John Carlos gave after winning the 200-meter event on October 16, 1968. Mexicans remember it a little differently. That's because 14 days earlier, on October 2, 1968, the Mexican military opened fire on university students that had congregated at a plaza in Tlatelolco in Mexico City. The students had been part of a movement that had been demanding democracy in the country and change from the single ruling party, the PRI. Their slogan had been, "We want a revolution, not the Olympics." Although it ended tragically and suddenly, with thousands wounded and hundreds of people dead, the movement changed the country forever, as it would pave for the opening to democracy decades later. Brazil's experience in the months leading up to the Games was not as dramatic, but it also had important consequences for the country. Protests had been occurring since March 15, 2015, about a year before the Games started. The protesters were outraged at the social and economic conditions of the country and allegations of corruption against the ruling Workers' Party, especially the president, Dilma Rousseff. The protest led to Congress suspending her from the presidency in May 2016 and then officially removing her from her post 10 days after the Games ended on August 31, 2016. This, in turn, paved the way for the rise of Bolsonaro and the current situation that Brazil is experiencing. In both cases, Mexico and Brazil wanted to showcase their economic advancement, but the plan only have succeeded. No other country in Latin America has seriously considered hosting the Games. Maybe this is not unrelated. So how have athletes from Latin America and the Caribbean fared over time? Which countries have overachieved and which have underachieved? And who are the most successful medalists of all time from the region? Let's take a look. One way to measure country success is as a function of population. Obviously, the more people a country has, the more likely that at least some of them will become Olympic medalists, and vice versa. The top 5 populated countries in Latin America are Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, and Peru, so in theory, they should do well. A potential circumstance that might change that dynamic is how wealthy a country is. In theory, if a country is richer, they might be able to make up for their lack of population. So the 5 countries with the highest GDP per capita in Latin America and the Caribbean are Puerto Rico, Bahamas, Panama, Trinidad and Tobago, and Chile. These have changed over time, especially with Panama, which used to be much lower and included at one point or another Uruguay and Venezuela. How has this translated to acquisition of medals? Well, sadly, there are 5 Latin American countries that have never won a medal of any kind. These are Belize, Bolivia, El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua. There are also 4 Caribbean countries that have never won an Olympic medal, places like St. Lucia and Dominica. In other words, places that are either poor or have small populations. The country in this list with the largest population, for instance, is Bolivia with 11 million, but it's also the second poorest country in the region. Meanwhile, the top 5 countries with the most medals are in order: Cuba with 241, Brazil with 150, Jamaica with 87, Argentina with 77, and Mexico with 73. If you instead considered medals per capita, it's Bahamas, Jamaica, Cuba, Grenada, and Trinidad and Tobago. By that measure, the worst ranking here is Peru, followed by Guatemala. This pattern more or less repeated itself in Tokyo 2020, with Brazil and Cuba at the top of the standings. But there were some surprising results, like that of Ecuador, who had its most successful result to date, with 3 medals, 2 gold and 1 silver, and the Dominican Republic, who won 5 medals, 3 silver and 2 bronze. Thus, the truly impressive country here is Cuba, which is neither rich nor does it have a large population, and is nonetheless second in the total number of medals in the Western Hemisphere. This is especially so because its medal achievement has occurred in dozens of sports, from weightlifting to judo to baseball to canoeing, fencing, and athletics. In contrast, the other countries with high medals per capita, like Jamaica and Bahamas, have been concentrated in a single sport, athletics. Out of the combined 98 medals the 2 countries have won, only 3 have been in something else. The road to success thus seems to be a strong government program aimed at developing athletes, as in the case of Cuba, a political priority for the Marxist regime, or concentration in a particular sport with the aim of achieving excellence, as is the case of Jamaica. The other somewhat less effective one is for the sport to be popular in the country. Latin America has absolutely dominated the football-soccer competition in the past 2 decades, with the gold medal going to Argentina and Brazil twice and Mexico once. Likewise, Nicaragua and Honduras came closest to winning a medal in 1996 and 2016 when they played in the bronze game in the most popular sport in the country, baseball and football-soccer respectively. Over the years, there have been many impressive athletes from the region, like Teófilo Stevenson, considered the best Cuban Olympic heavyweight boxer, who won 3 consecutive gold medals. Alberto Juantorena, also from Cuba, first person to win gold in both the 400 meters and 800 meter races. Torben Grael, who won 5 medals in sailing and is still the Brazilian with the most medals. Joaquin Capilla, a diver that is the Mexican person to earn the most individual medals, including gold in Melbourne 1956. Mariana Pajon from Colombia, a cyclist that is a 2-time gold medalist, the first Colombian to do so. Yulimar Rojas, a gold medalist from Venezuela, who shattered the world record twice in triple jump at Tokyo 2020. But undoubtedly, the most impressive athlete from the region is Usain Bolt from Jamaica. Not only did he win 8 gold medals in 3 consecutive Olympic Games, but he also broke the world record 3 separate times. Let me end by noting that although many Latin American countries have surprisingly participated in the Winter Olympics, Mexico, for instance, has done it 9 times, Brazil 8, and even Guatemala once, out of the over 15 countries that have participated, none have ever won a single medal. How long until we see one? It could be as soon as 6 months from now, when the Beijing Winter Olympics begin in February 2022. Often with little support, Latin American and Caribbean athletes continue to excel. Good luck to them in 2022 and 2024.